Let's picture this together for a moment. A sea of people, men, women, children, flooding the streets of Lagos in 1983. Some crying, some angry, some silent, dragging along a cheap woven plastic bag, red in color, blue or white, bulging with everything they owned. Those bags, some torn in places and tied with ropes, would later earn a name that the world would never forget, namely, Ghana must go. Was it just a bag, or was it a visible sign of humiliation? Those checkered bags became a symbol of a troubling time in West Africa when Nigeria told millions of Ghanaians to leave. How did this happen? How did two countries once connected by trade, culture, and friendship and even politics end up divided by fear and politics? And how did a simple market bag found in every corner of Africa come to represent a history of pain, migration, and irony? This is the story of Ghana Must Go. Let's rewind to the late 1970s. This was a time when Nigeria was dripping in oil wealth and Ghana was drowning in economic despair. Nigeria was the giant of Africa, swimming in petrodollars. The streets of Lagos were lively and filled with imported cars, skyscrapers, and lavish parties. Between 1973 and 1980, Nigeria's oil revenue shot up by over 300%, and the country became a magnet for migrants across West Africa, Ghanaians included. Meanwhile, in Ghana, things had fallen apart. Inflation was sky high, unemployment soared, and the once stable cedi was now in free fall. The overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah, followed by a string of military coups, left the nation in economic shambles. By 1982, Ghana's economy had shrunk so badly that tens of thousands of citizens fled the country in search of survival, and Nigeria, rich and booming and close to Ghana, became the next destination. By 1983, an estimated 2 million West African migrants, including over 1 million Ghanaians, were living and working in Nigeria as teachers, carpenters, domestic workers, traders, and artisans. They filled the gaps in Nigeria's growing urban economy. But just as Ghana's people were settling in, Nigeria's dream began to collapse. In the early 1980s, oil prices crashed, causing money to stop flowing into Nigeria. Many people lost their jobs, prices rose, and the once promising prosperity disappeared. Nigerians who had previously welcomed foreigners began to see them as competition. Politicians took advantage of this anger. This led to a crisis that exploded in 1983, and everything happened very quickly. On January 17, 1983, Nigeria's President Shehu Shagari announced the mass expulsion of all undocumented migrants, giving them just 14 days to leave the country. No appeal, no warning, no compassion. The official justification? That these foreigners were the cause of Nigeria's rising unemployment, crime, and economic troubles. But everyone knew who the target was. It wasn't the foreigners, it was Ghanaians. Things instantly became chaotic. From Lagos to Kano, from Ibadan to Port Harcourt, markets shut down as panicked migrants packed whatever they could into small checkered plastic bags, the now iconic Ghana Must Go bags. These weren't mere suitcases. They represented desperation. Families who had lived in Nigeria for years suddenly found themselves as refugees, walking long distances to the border. The roads to Seme border, which connects Nigeria and Benin Republic, were crowded with people. Children rode on their mothers' backs. Men pushed bicycles loaded with their belongings, and women clutched their savings. Many could not afford transportation, and some even died on the road due to exhaustion and hunger. By February, over 1 million Ghanaians had been forced out of Nigeria. The images shocked the world, and for the first time, Africa saw one of its own countries conduct a mass expulsion of fellow Africans in such humiliating fashion. Ironically, this wasn't Nigeria's first time. In 1969, Ghana had done the same thing, expelling thousands of Nigerians during its Aliens Compliance Order. So, for some Nigerians, 1983 felt like revenge. But this time, the scale was unprecedented. A humanitarian crisis was created in just a matter of days. The words Ghana must go spread like wildfire. Newspapers, radio stations, and angry Nigerians used it as both a taunt and a label for the exodus. The bag itself, cheap, durable, checkered in red, blue, or black, became an unintended symbol of displacement. Decades later, the name stuck. These bags were no longer checkered plastic bags. They were now known as Ghana Must Go. But what were these bags called before the 1983 incident? Before being mockingly named Ghana Must Go during the expulsion from Nigeria in 1983, these bags did not have a single widely recognized brand name. They were simply affordable, popular, and sturdy woven plastic sacks. However, globally and regionally, they were known by several descriptive names depending on the country or context. Tartan Chinese laundry bag. This is a common and perhaps most descriptive name referencing the plaid pattern and the bags used for carrying laundry or large loads. Chinatown tote. In the United States, they are often associated with Chinese immigrants or businesses that used them for large-scale carrying. Ghanaian sack or Ghanaian bag. This is a simple, non-derogatory term used in Ghana itself. Efewura Swami, this is a Twi phrase from Ghana meaning literally, landlord, help me carry my bag, or, quote, help me carry my bag, reflecting its large capacity. Refugee bag, this is a term used in various parts of the world including the United Kingdom due to the bag's frequent appearance in humanitarian crises and during periods of mass migration. It is also described as Tokenkoffer in Germany, which means Turkish suitcase. In Germany, the bag is associated with Turkish immigrants who used it to carry their belongings. It is also known as Guyanese Samsonite. In Guyana, this nickname highlights the bag's recognized strength and durability. In Nigeria, specifically before the 1983 event, they were simply considered cheap, ordinary bags or large market bags found at places like Balogun Market in Lagos. The 1983 expulsion did not only send Ghanaians packing, it broke lives, reshaped economies, and scarred African unity. At the human level, the stories were devastating. Ghanaians who had lived in Nigeria for decades lost everything overnight: homes, businesses, friends, even citizenship documents. Families were torn apart at checkpoints. Children got lost in the chaos. Those who managed to cross into Benin Republic found the border shut by Ghanaian authorities, who said they weren't ready to receive such a massive influx into Ghana at the time. So just imagine that people banished from one country were denied entry into their own country. Thousands were stranded in limbo, sleeping on roadsides, depending on aid from Red Cross volunteers and churches. Disease spread quickly, and death, it followed quietly and devastatingly. The international press condemned Nigeria's actions. The BBC and the New York Times ran stories describing it as human waves of despair. But Nigeria's government stood firm. The Shagari administration argued that it was protecting jobs for citizens amid a collapsing economy. Oil prices had crashed. Unemployment was soaring. There was no other way to handle the situation than to send the Ghanaians away, Shagari claimed. But there are many twists to this story as these moments became a turning point for Ghana. The humiliation of Ghana Must Go forced the country into deep introspection. Under Jerry Rawlings, Ghana began serious reforms, stabilizing the economy, investing in education, and courting foreign investors into the country. Over time, it transformed into one of West Africa's most stable democracies. Nigeria, on the other hand, slipped deeper into economic decline and political chaos. By December 1983, just months after the expulsion, Shagari's government was overthrown in a coup led by Major General Muhammadu Buhari. Today, the phrase "Ghana must go" has outlived the event itself. For many, it is just a cheap, checkered bag found in every African market. But behind that woven plastic is a story about migration, about pride, about politics, and one that continues to shape West Africa's identity to this day. Ghana Must Go forced West African leaders to take migration seriously. In 1979, ECOWAS had already signed a protocol on free movement of persons, but Nigeria's expulsion exposed how fragile that promise was. The humiliation triggered renewed regional dialogue, leading to stronger cross-border agreements and, over time, freer movements of citizens. Ironically, decades later, Nigerians began migrating to Ghana for education and business, and reversing the flow that once saw Ghanaians pouring into Lagos. In 2019, Ghana even topped Nigeria in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index. The psychological scar remains. For many West Africans, Ghana Must Go symbolizes both African disunity and shared struggle. The term occasionally resurfaces in political discourse as a cautionary tale about xenophobia and nationalism gone wrong. Yet, there is also an element of reclamation. Young Ghanaians have embraced the phrase in fashion, music, and film. It has appeared in art exhibitions in Accra, Lagos, and even London, a poetic reminder that what once represented expulsion now embodies endurance. Even global luxury houses like Balenciaga and Louis Vuitton have designed and sold checkered woven shopper bags strikingly similar to the original, crafting them in calfskin leather and retailing them for figures that climb over $1,000. Decades later, the story of Ghana Must Go is still remembered across Africa. It was not only about Ghanaians leaving Nigeria, it was about Africa struggling to manage its own growth, to hold leaders accountable, and to treat neighboring countries with respect. But the story runs deeper than nostalgia. It forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth, namely, Africa's borders are lines drawn by colonial rulers, yet Africans still use them to divide themselves. The Ghana Must Go saga did not stop at immigration. It was about fear, economic mismanagement, and political failure. It was a story of a giant Nigeria lashing out at its neighbors when its own house was burning. And decades later, we see that same script playing out again. We see it in South Africa with xenophobic attacks. We see it in the trade wars between Nigeria and Ghana. We also see it in border closures that strangle small traders while elites move freely. But maybe, just maybe, that's the true legacy of Ghana Must Go. It is to bring us to the realization that until African nations learn to see one another as partners, not parasites, until we stop turning against each other whenever hardship strikes, only then will history stop repeating itself, wrapped neatly in a plastic bag. Many thanks for watching this edition of Back in History, and do remember to subscribe to the channel or follow the page for regular notification on every new video. I am your friend and host, the Dim, wishing you the best of time in all you do.